finding real solutions of polynomials. The very first thing we're going to look at when we look at these problems is it in standard form? Is it in standard form? So what is standard form? Standard form is when everything is on one side of the equal sign. For example, if I have x cubed minus 2x equals 4, is this standard form? No, because the 4 is over here on the right side and everything else is on the left side. So we want to bring this over, so we have to use our concepts of using inverse operations. How are we going to take this 4 over here to the other side? We're going to subtract 4. So we end up with x cubed minus 2x minus 4 equals 0. Standard form. Okay? So recall, standard form is just everything on one side of the equal sign, and it's set equal to 0. Once we have it in standard form, then we want to factor. So when we're factoring, remember you got to take into account GCF, difference of squares, trinomial, difference of cubes, sum of cubes, grouping, all the types of factoring that we've done. And then you factor. Okay? Then the last thing you want to do is use the zero property. So what is this zero property? This zero property says that everything that we factor out, we set each one equal to 0. Factor equal to 0. And solve for x. And I say x loosely, but it could be solved for any what variable. Hopefully by working some of these problems, you're going to see a pattern and then understand what the zero property is. So let's look at an example. The example that we're going to look at, a fairly simple one. Let's look at x to the fourth minus 3x squared plus 2 equals 0. So the problem is already in factored form. So, well, I'm sorry. The problem is already in standard form, so we can now factor. So this is the type of problem that I said when you see that x to the fourth, we're going to use that substitution method. So we're going to rewrite x to the fourth as x squared to the second. Then we're going to say let u equal x squared. So now we end up with u squared minus 3u plus 2 equals 0. So this is a trinomial, and because it's a trinomial, we're going to use the x method. We're going to place the 2 at the top and a negative 3 at the bottom. What factors of 2 that would give me negative 3? Well, there's only one factor of 2, which is 1 and what? 2. And because it has to be negative, we're going to have to use what? Minuses. So then we end up with u minus 1 times u minus 2. And again, all of this is still going to equal 0. Okay? So we're going to plug in our x. So this is going to, well, basically our u. So we get x squared minus 1 times x squared minus 2 equals 0. But this is still not factored because we got to factor using difference of squares now. So this is x minus 1, x plus 1 times x squared minus 2 equals 0. Here, because this is a minus 2, it's not a perfect square, so we can't factor it anymore. Okay? So now we factor, so we're down to the last step, which says set each one of these equal to 0. So I'm going to set x minus 1 equal to 0, x plus 1 equals 0, and then x squared minus 2 equal to 0. Because it says set each one of these equal to 0. Now solve for your variable. So here, we're going to add 1 to both sides. So we get x equals 1. We're going to subtract 1 from both sides. So x equals negative 1. Here we got to do a little different. We're going to add 2 to both sides. But we end up with x squared equals 2. And what do we do with this? Get rid of a square? Yes, we have to take the square root. We take the square root of a variable, we must add plus or what? Minus. So the square root of x squared is x equals plus or minus the square root of 2. Okay? So when we're done, we basically looked at our real solutions. Our real solutions become 1 and negative 1 plus and a minus square root of 2. So x equals negative 1, 1, square root of 2, and you don't really need to put the plus there. It's understood to be a plus, and a minus square root of 2. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4 solutions, and if we go back up to our beginning problem, we had 4 as our leading exponent, and we have 4 solutions. Okay, so those match up. We have 4 solutions, and remember, real solution says where they're going to actually cross the x-axis, because real solutions and zeros of polynomials is nothing more than the x-intercepts. So this is where it's going to cross the x-axis. All right, that was a lot to do with that one particular problem. So let's look at another one. Example 2. All right, so we're going to look at 4k cubed equals 9k squared. All right, question we want to ask ourselves, is it in standard form? The answer is no. So we're going to bring the 9k squared over to the other side. Because this is a plus, we are going to subtract. So we end up with 4k cubed minus 9k squared, and that's going to equal 0. Okay? So now, looking at this particular problem, to factor this, we are going to have to basically look at our GCF first. So we got k to the third, k to the second. Our GCF is going to be k to the second. Okay, so we're going to put our k to the second on the outside. We're left with a 4. 3 minus 2 is 1, so we get a k. And then we get minus 9 equals 0. There's nothing else we can do. So now we're going to say each one of these equal to 0. So k squared equals 0. And then 4k minus 9 equals 0. Okay, we take the square root of 0. We get what? 0. So k equals 0. We're going to add 9 to this side, add 9 to the other side. We get 4k equals 9, and then divide by 4. So k equals 9 over 4. But we only have 2 solutions. And the reason why we only have 2 solutions is because we have a k squared here that equals 0, and 0 is neither negative nor positive. So we would have had 2 solutions if this wasn't 0. So now would have gave us our 3 solutions that we will have here. And what we call here is that at 0 there's a multiplicity here. But that's for another lesson. Okay? So our 2 solutions are k equals 0 and 9 over 4. Alright, last thing I want to say before we leave this afternoon is let's look at this problem here. Alright, So I'm going to give you the shortcut method for finding our zeros after you factor. If you have a variable outside of your parentheses, then your solution would be 0. Why is that? Because if we look here, we have k, and we would set k equal to what? 0. K equals 0. Okay? If I change it up and I say, well, we have 3h, h minus 2 equals 0. If I take 3h and set it equal to 0, I'm going to divide by 3, and I end up with h equals 0 over 3, and 0 over 3 is 0. So it doesn't matter. If it's a variable outside of your parentheses, after you factor, it's going to equal 0. So that's one solution. Okay? If you have a number outside of the parentheses without a variable, then the solution does not exist for that term. So what are you saying, Miss Sappho? I'm saying basically, if I just have 3 parentheses x minus 2 equals 0, and I set 3 equal to 0, can 3 equal 0? Nope. So that's not one of the solutions. Okay? And the last one. If you have parentheses, or if you have terms in the parentheses, then all you have to do is change the sign. And that would be your solution. So if I have, let's say, 2 parentheses, x minus 3 equals 0, well, we know this is going to be what? None, because 2 can't equal 0. But inside the parentheses, x minus 3 equals 0, so x is going to equal 3. Why is that so? Because x minus 3 equals 0, we add 3 to both sides, we get x equals 3. So all I'm saying is when you see problems like this, you should be able to tell what the 0 is once you factor. If you have a fraction, so let's say you have 2x minus 3 equals 0. The solution then would be change the sign to a positive. This will be the top. This will be the denominator. So it'll be 3 over 2. Let's try some. Okay? All right. Try those problems. Okay? So they're already factored. So the solution would be x equals 3, x equals negative 4. Just change the sign. This one down here, because we have 2 times x and it's outside of the parentheses, x is going to equal 0 and x is going to equal a positive 3. Over here, this is just a 4, so that's not going to be a solution. The only solution we're going to have is x equals negative 4. And the last one will be x equals, change the sign from positive, make it negative, negative 5 over 2. Okay, make sure you take your notes, and you guys have a good evening. Be safe.